And lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be He. Beyond any blessing, song, praise, and consolation, utter in the world and say Amen. And then we'll finish up on page 586. You may be seated. All right. So there is a theme with the readings from the Torah, from the prophets, and from the Besorah. And there's a theme with the festival of Sukkot. As we go through the months that the different um, convocations, the different moedim, times appointed times by God, we come to the final one. We just had Rosh Hashanah, which is the day that the gates of heaven are opened up and the three books are taken out: the book of the living, the book of the wicked, and the book of the ordinary person. And like I was saying on Shabbat, which book are we written in? Which book are we written in? Are we written in the book of, I don't think we're written in the book of the wicked, but which book are we written in? The book of the living or the book of the ordinary? The ones who have not made a decision yet. The one who hasn't dedicated his life to God, right? We should be written in the book of life. How do we know we're there? Don't. That's why the rabbis say, when a rabbi was asked or said that on the day before you die you should repent. And his students asked him, well, how do we know when we're going to die? And he said, you should repent every day, right? And so that's what we do. So we repent every day. We seek God every day. If you don't know if you're written in there, you're not sure, then you need to fall on your knees and call on God and start walking in his ways, right? And that's what Yeshua is, and that's what this whole thing is about, huh?
And even if you're pretty sure.
And even if you're pretty sure, don't be proudful, because you don't know. A lot of people think they know everything, and they really don't. And so everybody should be unsure, and everybody should be seeking God and repenting every day. That's the way it is, right? If you think, it's like John said, if you think you have not sinned, then you're a liar, right? Yeah, you should get off your phone. But yeah, and so we're talking about the festival of Sukkot. Remember, we've talked about so we have Rosh Hashanah, and on that day, those who are written in the book of life and the book of the wicked, their judgment is sealed on that day. But the people who are written in the book of the ordinary, they're given the 10 days of awe. They're given a reprieve, a time to repent, to turn to God before the day of judgment, which is Yom Kippur, right? On Rosh Hashanah, those that are in Messiah, who are righteous in the Torah of Messiah and stuff, they will be raised. Okay, that's what it talks about. And on on Rosh Hashanah, it's a warning for us that Yom Kippur is coming. On Yom Kippur, the day of judgment, the nations will be judged then, and those who are found in Yeshua, the Messiah, and his Torah will be raised, because that will be the beginning of the reign of the Messiah, the 1,000-year reign. And one of the things we know about that is in Zechariah chapter 14. Very, very good explanation as to what's going to happen. And some of it my wife read here a couple weeks ago with the Revelation. In here they call them cooking pots, but it doesn't say that in the Hebrew, just so you know. It just says pots. And if you know what the pots are, you know that they're not cooking pots. They're not even special pots. Only thing they're good for, the only thing they're good for is going to the bathroom. And that's what they are. There was a certain place in the temple where the priests and stuff would go to relieve themselves, and these are those pots. And those pots represent us. Okay?
My grandmother called it a thunder mug.
Thunder mug. Ah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. 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 So, but what we see here is that um, Adonai is going to strike the people with a plague. All those who came to war against Jerusalem with a plague. And my wife and I like to think of it as, because our kids were growing up there, all these different things about zombies, apocalypse, and all these different things, right? And my wife, said there's no such thing as a zombie apocalypse. And she was reading in here and read this plague, and boy, howdy, does it sound like a zombie apocalypse, And it starts in chapter 14, verse 12. Adonai will strike all the people who made war against Jerusalem with a plague, in which their flesh rots away while they are standing on their feet. Their eyes rot away in their sockets, and their tongues rot away in their mouths. Okay, right? When that day comes, there will be among them great panic, sent by Adonai, so that everyone lays hand on his neighbor, who in turn attacks him. So they're going to lay hands on their neighbor, and in turn their neighbor's going to attack them. People that they knew, right? And some you see in zombie movies, right, where your neighbors have become zombies and they attack you and you attack back. Okay, anyways, I'm not saying literally it's a zombie. I have no idea. But it really sounds like it, right? But time is coming when a bad plague is coming that God is going to put on the nations that attacked Israel, right? Some people say it's a nuclear, right? Yep. And because it also says, Yehuda too will fight against Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the nations will be assembled, gold, silver, and clothing in great abundance. A plague like this plague will also affect horses, mules, camels, donkeys, and all other animals in those camps. So it's something that's going to affect everything. It's going to be a plague that affects everyone and everything. Okay? Even the nations are going to they're going to gather all their gold, silver, and clothing in great abundance because they're going to try and cure it or fix it or whatever on their own,
There's
Yeah.
a little bit further in-depth understanding of that. So these are the people that fought against Israel.
These are the people who fought against
that
Israel.
fought the hardest not
Yeah.
to allow God to take a victory, right?
Right.
And they were punished. They were still living, but they were punished pretty severely.
Yeah.
They became that pot. They are like that pot that became so detestable that nobody wants to touch it, nobody wants to
Yep.
look at it, and yet even that can be redeemed.
Yep, even
And
that
I
can be
think
redeemed.
At the end there, when it's talking about there will
Yep.
no longer be a Canaanite,
Yep.
he's saying those people that were so detestable, and even us, we are, I can't say that I'm not one of those, I have my own dross that needs to be burned up.
We all have our own dross to be burned up. Yep.
Bring forth that gold pot that can be used in the
Yep.
service of the Creator.
Yep. Exactly.
So the money is, they're trying to buy their way out of this.
Yeah, that's basically what they're trying to do. By the way, they're trying to do things on their own, trying to and stuff, right?
Take the system.
Well, in a way, yeah.
Take
Yeah.
this tax.
And so what we're going to see coming is that what we're looking for right now is not a third temple to be built. It's not going to be built until Messiah comes, okay? And we know that. But what they will build is an altar. Once they build the altar in the right spot it's supposed to be in, then they can, they already have the priests already are in place, ready to go. They have everything ready to go. And all they need is the altar. That's mainly what they're focusing on. They're not really focusing on the temple itself, but if they can get they figure if they can get the altar built, then they can build the rest of the temple later.
And the red heifer.
Yeah, we're looking for the altar and the red heifer. And they go hand in hand, and there's a reason for that.
President Trump's already agreed with Netanyahu and the priests in Israel that start it, they said in 2032 it should be. So we're going
Yeah.
pretty quick.
They
So-
are gonna build an altar, you're saying?
They said they were gonna start on the temple. So, but
Yeah, but the start of it would be the altar. That needs to be made first, because before they can build the temple, they're going to have to build the altar, and that's what we need to look for. And at that time, they can begin the sacrificial system all over again. And when we see that, that's the other thing, because then they have to have the red heifer too during that process. So we won't see the red heifer until we see that altar being built. That red heifer will come to fruition at that time.
They've already sacrificed one in practicing.
In practicing, right. It didn't meet a qualification because it came up, it was, had some blemishes. But, yes, they've done these things. They're practicing on a show, going around. They show people, they have a altar on wheels that they take around Israel, the priests do, and they demonstrate as the festivals come up how sacrificing stuff. They don't sacrifice real animals on it. They just demonstrate with symbolism with stuffed animals or whatever, you know.
It says that they already have a tabernacle set out in the wilderness, I guess, where they practice. It is set up with everything, the menorah,
Yeah.
the
The only thing they're missing is the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah.
Ark of the Covenant.
So, anyways,
But they're
yeah. So when we see this, when we see the altar being built and stuff, then we see these other things start to fall into place. We know the time is short. And when Yeshua comes, and at that time, when that does happen, it does say that the adversary, whether it refers to the beast or the anti-Messiah, whatever, he is going to put an end to it after 3.5 years. And he's going to set himself up on that spot as God himself, right? We know that. We've read that. It talks about that also in the prophets, about the man of perdition, Daniel in particular. When we see that, we know that the end is close. And then Yeshua is going to come at the end of 3.5 years after the beast or the anti-Messiah has been doing his thing. And he's going to come and he's going to gather his people from the four corners of the world, all of Israel and those who have attached themselves to Israel, and he's bringing them back to the land. He's bringing them back to Jerusalem. And we will then take part in the rebuilding of the temple. He will scatter the enemies that are in Israel, bring peace to the land, and prepare that temple, get that temple prepared, and then he's going to get the priesthood back in order. That'll be with the red heifer, because they'll have to be sprinkled by the red heifer. Everybody will have to be sprinkled by the red heifer at that time. And so it'll be a big thing. And once they get all this stuff going and the sacrificial system operating again like it's supposed to, then he's going to gather his army. Okay? He will gather his army, and he will go out amongst the nations and conquer them. It'll be a war against the nations, and he will conquer them. And then it continues on here, talking about, on verse 16, finally everyone remaining from all the nations that came to attack Jerusalem will go up every year to worship the king, Adonai Sabaoth, and to keep the festival of Sukkot. Why Sukkot? Because it's his birthday, but also because it's the festival for the nations. It's God's prophecy to the nations that on those, it's a only 8-day festival we have that is named the 8-day festival. 7 days and then the 8th day. 8 is the number for new beginnings, okay? And God has given mankind 7,000 years, 6,000 years that man will rule the earth in their state of sin. 1,000 years under the Messiah, that's 7. And at the end of that 7,000 years will be the 8th day, new beginnings. When the earth will, renewed earth and renewed heaven will come. As it says in Jeremiah, that's when the new covenant will take effect. Okay, the renewed covenant that we see in Jeremiah and what Yeshua is talking about. I mean, we have a taste of it, but it's not here yet. It won't come into its fullness of the world to come until the 8th day. And that time, then nobody will have to go tell his brother about God, because everybody's going to know God. And God's going to change us in an instant from mortality to immortality. Our bodies will change into just like Adam and Eve were created in before the fall. Okay? It's still going to be a physical body, but a spirit. It's going to be a physical, spiritual world. Yeah.
Okay, I keep hearing these pastors talking about we're in the new covenant. It's a new covenant, and from my understanding, the new covenant is when your heart.
Yep.
And it's not now because we still have, but when Jesus came and died on the cross and started communion, which I take every morning, I take it with renewed covenant because it's no longer in the lambs and the bulls and goats that are being their blood, it's the blood of my Savior Jesus Christ. So I want to make sure that I'm doing that right.
Well, it's Yeshua's blood is symbolic. It's because he's not an actual sacrifice. Right. Yep. And that's fine. Because what we're doing is we're having a taste of it. But for now, we just have a taste.
But it's not the new covenant.
It's not the new covenant. Because if it was, I wouldn't be up here doing what I'm doing, right? We wouldn't be in need of teachers, right? Because we all know God, and we will be changed in a twinkle of an eye from mortality to immortality to a spiritual, physical body that God originally intended for us to have. And not only that, but see, right now, like I was saying, in our DNA is sin. When Adam fell, it changed our bodies, our physical structure, and in our bodies came sin. That's part of it's in the DNA of us. That's why it's so easy to sin, huh?
It's only passed through the man.
Right, it's only passed through the man.
One woman didn't.
Right. Yeah.
She didn't have that DNA.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, she has it too, but both women have it, but something that can be passed on, that a woman can pass on. Okay, but the man, everything comes from the man that's passed on. That's why you see a lot of different hereditary diseases and stuff are usually come from the man. Sometimes it comes from the woman, but it's not very often. What?
Does that include colorblindness? I think I heard from my science teacher that colorblindness comes from the male.
It says the majority of colorblind people are male.
Yeah.
But
There are women who are colorblind too, but
There's
but it usually doesn't mean. I mean, it is in rare cases where the woman can transfer that, but it's a rare case. Mostly, it will come down through the male, which is where the bloodline curses come through. Is through the male. Okay, because that was God's curse on man. That he is responsible for his judgment before God on how his family ended up. You know, the woman won't stand in front of God. She will stand there for her own thing, but also being a partner to man. What does she do to help, or what does she do to get in the way? You know, I mean, that would be there. But the man will ultimately be put in front of God and judged on how you raised your family. How did you do your family, right?
What about single women?
Huh?
What about single women that have no man that stands for them?
Yeah, their father. They would go to their father, just like it says when if a daughter of a priest is married, but her husband dies, she's able to go back to the house as long as she didn't have any children. She can go back and live under her father's care, under her father's responsibility.
My dad's dead.
Huh?
My dad's dead. Y'all were there at the funeral.
Yeah,
So what are
but God is your heavenly Father then, right? Yeah,
Jesus is supposed to be my
yeah. So,
husband.
yeah.
So he.
Plus,
If Jesus is my
You have a better
husband,
husband than you thought.
I know, but I'm just saying, then, well, he can't stand to be judged.
Yeah, you
how does that
can.
work?
well, because he is the judge. So yeah, I mean, he will be the judge. But it says that if he's your heavenly Father, and it's still going to go on, even though you don't have a husband right now, and you don't have a dad right now. It's still on them when the time comes. You right now, in essence, God is our Father spiritually while we live here. Even though maybe we don't have a physical dad, well, He is our dad in that way. Why would He need to be judged?
Doesn't it seem like when he's talking about when people are up there separating the sheep from the goats and stuff or whatever, but like people are saying Jesus can speak on my behalf for my that judgment. And then Jesus is like, either he knew you or he didn't know you.
Yeah. Well, even in that sense, those who did the work are the sheep, right? It says the sheep on my right, you come into your Father's blessing and stuff, right? Because when I was thirsty, you gave me water. When I was hungry, you fed me, so forth and so on, right? They did works. They did works. So when people say, "Oh, there's no works," well, yes, there is. There is, because all the people on the left, as the goats, they believe that there's no works. They believe they're making it just by confession alone and not doing anything, or still dwelling in the world with stuff. That the world still got them, and they're still, just we have to be careful of that. I hear people say, "Well, the reason why God calls us sheep is because we're so dumb." No, sheep follow the shepherd. The goats do their own thing. That's why you'll see in a lot of sheep herds, there's a few goats that the sheep follow. Okay? They'll follow who's in the leader. But if there's a shepherd to lead them, they'll follow the shepherd. And that's why Yeshua is our shepherd. We follow him. Huh? The doggy is just the guard. Yeah, that's a guard dog. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. But anyways, because he's there to help fight the lions and tigers and whatever else might come. Yeah, his sheep know his voice, right? So, anyways, getting back to this.
They speak Canaan?
So getting back to this, though, the nations are going to come up. Every year, they're going to send a representative to Jerusalem, to the temple, because, everybody talks about this rapture and everybody's going to heaven and stuff. That's going to be part of the rapture. Sorry to say, if there's a rapture, it's when Yeshua comes and takes us back to Jerusalem. That's as far as we're going, because everything is here on earth. God never intended for us to live in heaven. Never. We will live here on earth. Everything going on earth, this is where it's going to be. Okay? And that's what we got to realize, okay? Even when we die, it talks about that, it says we sleep. But the thing is, if you go to sleep, remember some nights you get real tired and you sleep, and all of a sudden your alarm clock goes off, and it's like, I just went to bed. That's what it's going to be like, even more so, because it's when we die, we're not going to notice anything, right? Because all of a sudden, when we die, all of a sudden, that shofar is going to blow, and we're going to wake up and go, wow, it's the end already, and thus we will be with the Lord forever, right? And that's basically what Rav Shaul is talking about. He's using Jewish eschatology as an understanding, not what the Christian church has been teaching, that when you die, you go to heaven and stuff like that. Yeah, when you die, there's going to be the judgment, right? Because when you die, it's like going to sleep and then all of a sudden waking up. That's what it's going to be like. Okay? We're not going to know time or anything was going on, that's why David even cries out to God that if I die, can the dust praise you? So he's talking about us, dust to dust, right? We can't until we rise from the dead, until we are resurrected. So,
Apostle Paul said that we're face to face with the Lord
when we wake up, yep. When we wake up, we will be face to face.
In my opinion, that's kind of the twinkling of the eye part of it, that you're going to die, and then just like that, you're there.
Yeah, because remember, time doesn't matter in the spirit world. Time has no bearing, right? Yeah.
Hey, you know that one song we sometimes listen to? It's "Burn in Me."
Yeah.
Whenever I hear it, I think of a different song where they say, "Ash to ash, dust to dust, you're gonna burn with the rest of us."
No, that's not a good one. Yeah, I don't think we'll sing that one. So anyways, the nations will come together. Those nations, and it says those nations that survive, right? Those nations that survive will go up to Jerusalem for the festival of Sukkot. Okay? So let's see where I'm trying to find that. So finally, everyone remaining, everyone who survives, All the nations that survive will send their representative every year. And if they don't send their representative, then a plague will come on them. See, God is able to provide for them. Now, see, this is not the world to come. This is the Messianic kingdom that's going on. Okay? And there's going to be some rebellious people.
The same punishment for not going that Israel had will be extended to all the nations.
Yep. Yep. And so, and what's interesting too is that the rabbis teach that in the time of the Messiah, when his kingdom is reigning too, is that he is going to teach even the Gentiles about tefillin, how to wear tefillin, how to wear tzitzit, how to wear a prayer shawl, how to pray, how to put the mezuzah on, all the commandments that were for Israel that will be incumbent upon them. Okay? That's what the rabbis teach, and I agree with them that at that time will, and that there's not going to be a new Torah. God's not going to give us a new Torah, but what Yeshua is going to do is he's going to teach us the real Torah. I mean, we've got some semblance. God has given Israel and the rabbis a lot of stuff, and I mean, they've written volumes of books just on Genesis chapter 1 to the first few chapters of Genesis. Volumes. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff, the opinion, stuff like that. But the thing is that when Yeshua comes, it won't be opinion. He's going to teach like he did when he was here already. It's going to be matter of fact. And stuff that we miss. See, right now, as we read too on Yom Kippur, part of it is that those things that are hidden are for God. But those things that are revealed are for us and our children so that we can keep the Torah. That's what it says. Right? So those things right now are revealed that we have, but the hidden things are going to be revealed to us later. And that it's going to be the same Torah, but we're going to be going, wow. You know? I mean, I've had people say when we were talking and studying Torah and stuff, and about Yeshua and stuff, and had people say, I've been going to church for many years, and I've never heard this. I had a pastor tell me that. I've never seen this. Why don't we teach this? You know? Actually, I had several pastors say that. Yeah. So, and that corresponds even with Isaiah 53, where it says, and the nations will, the lead kings and stuff will, that their mouths are going to fall because they're going to say, why haven't we heard this before? Why haven't we heard this before? That's what it's going to be like. So anyways, so the nations are going to come up to Jerusalem for the festival of Sukkot. Yes?
In my prayer time a few days ago came up this word history. And I started looking it up because Torah means instruction. Okay. And everybody says, oh, well, that's his story. But it's actually his Tory. And in England, Tory is, what do you call it, party?
Political party.
But Tory means principle.
Yeah.
Thinking,
His
God, that
principles.
so neat, yeah,
His instructions.
this
Yeah.
is all his story.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah.
And we call it, of course, his story. But,
Yeah.
but I guess it would be
Yeah.
the same thing. But it's but it doesn't mean law. Is that correct? Torah does not mean law. It means principle.
No, it means instructions.
Yeah.
There's laws in the Torah.
Yes.
There are different types of instructions in the Torah. The Torah is also a constitution for Israel. So it's not just laws, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff in there for living, for being a national life, government that God is establishing. Yeah. So when you hear people say the law, the only reason that the Greek uses the word law is because they don't have a word for Torah, for instruction and stuff. They don't have that word that can mean all of that, you know, and that's why it's important to understand that. So when you see in the New Testament where it talks about law, it's really talking about Torah, because that's the Greek word they had at that time. I mean, they've come up with stuff since that time, but at that time, that's what they had. That's what they had to go with. That's why you see in the Septuagint or the LXX that they use a lot of words that they don't have the actual meaning for in Hebrew because there wasn't any. So they had to come to the closest one that they could. So, yeah, so Sukkot, it's a festival of the nations, right? And the nations that survive will come up every year. And this is what we have today. Last night we celebrated Yeshua's birth. Is on this night. When we take a look at this, that around this time, God gives us a time period, historical time period, where we can see where this happened. Emperor Augustus issued an order for a census. This was actually a year before this happened. That's how they would do it. A year before this happened, they would pick a date later, a year from now or whatever, maybe a year and a half, to do this. So they get all this out to the, they had they didn't have planes and stuff like that, so they had trains even. They had to send it out on horseback with the message, hey, this is what we're going to do, right? And so the time came, and everyone went to be registered for the census, right? And also takes place too when Quirinius was governing in Syria. So we know that Roman, well, when did he didn't rule for that long there as governor. Okay, so now we've got a time frame, right? So the time frame is there, when it is. God always gives us something to be able to reflect on. Because the Romans, they did keep history. They wrote it down. Not only that, but we had our own people, Jewish people writing, Josephus and several others, even though Josephus was kind of a traitor, he still kept good record and everything of what was going on. And then it says, so everyone went to be registered each to his own town. So Joseph, because he was a descendant of David, went up from the town of Nazareth in the Galilee to the town of David. Now, the thing is, Rome doesn't care what town you're from. They just want you to get registered. Wherever you're at, it didn't matter. But Joseph, because it was the Sukkot, the 7th year Sukkot. The 7th year Sukkot, everybody, man, woman, child, had to appear in Jerusalem at the temple who was living in the land. Okay, who's living in the land. They had to appear there in Jerusalem for the 7-day festival, 8-day festival. Okay, it's the third pilgrimage festival. Okay, there's 3. You got Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So during the other 6 years, just the men had to go, but on the 7th year, everybody had to go. Okay, and the only way you could not, well, I mean, I'm sure Joseph didn't want to leave her back because she's going to have a baby soon, and so that's why he brought her, But also, he was married to her. That's why he's living in Nazareth. He followed what God said, what God told the angel to tell him, marry her. Go ahead and marry her. Yeah, okay. Well, now, Sukkot, the 7th year Sukkot, and so he knows he has to appear there. And now, a woman, everybody knows he probably hasn't been married that long, so how is she pregnant, right? And so he's got to explain to his family for another thing, okay? And that's why it says, while they were there, the time came for her to give birth, and she gave birth to her first child, a son. She wrapped him in cloth and laid him down in a feeding trough because there was no place for them in the living quarters. Because, they probably weren't expecting him and stuff, and they didn't really do community sukkahs. They did for their family, their size for their family, okay? And a lot of times, too, is that old sukkahs became places for the animals that they make so the animals could have a place to go when it was cold out, winter time and stuff, right? Well, we know it's starting to become winter, and that the shepherds do not take their animals out into the mountains, into the hills during that time. They keep them down in a like a fenced-in pen or whatever. Of course, they had rocks and stuff, but they keep them in there, keep an eye on them, and so that they're down lower, so because it's warmer. Whereas you go to higher elevation, they wouldn't survive, right? And so these priests that we see, so anyways, they give him birth in what used to be a sukkah. It still fulfills the requirement of a sukkah, okay? And and in there, the animals weren't in there. They would have shooed them out for that time period, would have cleaned it up as best they could, and laid him in this manger, this feeding trough, right? There's nothing wrong with the feeding trough. Got plenty of nice brand new straw hay in there, right? And so you put a blanket down, they put the on top of the blanket as well. Nice and soft, nice and warm because it's insulated, you know. And so that's where he's born. He is born in there. He's born on the first night of Sukkot, the 15th of Tishrei, which began last night for us here. So last night he was born. And she wrapped him in a cloth, in a baby's cloth. To be honest with you, it wasn't a diaper. I heard people say it was a cloth diaper or something like that. Swaddling clothes. Yeah.
Can I just, this is what, when I was studying, in the temple, the Levites, of course, had different jobs.
Yeah.
Each family had different jobs, getting the wood for the fire and whatever. And some were shepherds, and they took care of the sacrificial lambs that would be sacrificed. And what I had heard and studied was at that night, that was lambing season, and they don't keep the sheep in their sheep gate at night. They have to have the shepherds out with them to keep the animal, the enemies away, and the bad wolves and whatever. So these Levite shepherds knew about Messiah. They knew all about what was going to be happening. The angels appeared to them to tell them that it did happen. I get so tired from these people.
Yeah.
Oh, the shepherds were the poorest people, and so the angels had to come to them.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get to next. Yes, exactly.
And not only that, the swaddling clothes, they told me, were strips of the priest's garments that were no longer used.
Actually, the swaddling clothes were what women used during their time of period.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that's filthy rags. That's what
Filthy, but
God
they're clean. They can't use the ones over them. They'd have new ones.
Oh my God, I can't believe that.
Yeah.
God would not allow that.
Yeah, that's what they were. That's what they actually were.
Okay, swaddling clothes. I was just,
No, they weren't used. They were
No, I
they were clean. There was nothing wrong with them. They were probably cleaner than a lot of the other stuff that was around there. Yeah. So.
I like the priest.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they wouldn't have had access to this stuff. Yeah. But they wouldn't have had access to that because they're not
No.
priests.
No, but I mean, they're,
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Anyways, the thing is that we got to realize that Yeshua was born in a basically a filthy situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right, yes, I understand.
And when we take a look at this stuff, even when we talk about the pots, God can take those pots, talking about human beings, and clean them up, right? Purify them, right? And so that's what we're looking at. Yeshua was born and laid in a feeding trough, and he was laid down with swaddling clothes, the cloths and stuff that the women would use for their periods. Now they threw them out. They always had new ones, okay, and usually they were old clothes that no longer fit. That they would tear them up into strips or whatever, and that's what they would use, okay, and that's what that's talking about.
Because when they buried people, they always cut
Yep.
strips. And
Exactly.
what they were
Yep.
telling me
Old
that
clothes, stuff like that. Yep.
of priest robes that were no longer used. That's what was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I don't like it, but
I know, but the other thing is when we take a look here is that there's shepherds out in the field, and we've got Sukkot, a huge Sukkot, going to be taking place. The next morning, these animals that they are watching are going to be sacrificed. They're going to be part of the sacrifices. The thousands and thousands of sheep and goats and oxen to be sacrificed. And what's interesting is that at Sukkot, it's 7 days long, and each day there is a certain amount of oxen that are offered up. And when you count the total from the first day to the seventh day, you see it's 70. And 70 represents the number of the nations. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean there's 70 nations. It's the number for the nations. Okay, and so from the first day to the seventh day, and the seventh day is what? A Sabbath, right? And usually during the week it's a Sabbath. 7 days is a Sabbath, right? It also means completion. right? And so the nations are complete. But on the 8th day, the new beginnings, it's only one oxen and one of the amount of goats and sheep and stuff like that, just for the one oxen. Why? Because that's the world to come. We're all one. There's no more Canaanites. There's no more sinners. There's no more any of this other stuff. We're all one people now. There's no longer Jews and Gentiles. We're all one people in the world to come. That's what this is all leading up to.
Well, we're all one anyway, we come from Adam and Eve.
In that sense, right. But of course, the world is divided, right, until that time. So we have different things. But the thing is that those shepherds were out there. They were Levitical shepherds. They weren't priests, they were Levitical. See, everybody says, well, what happened to the Levites then after the temple was built? These are the things they were the ones who gathered wood. They were the ones who they had different jobs and stuff that needed to be done, watching the animals, going and buying or gathering, probably gathering the first of the flocks and stuff that people would bring. They put in with other stuff for what? Sacrifices, right? Cleaning it. Well, yep. They would have been cleaning. It would have been part of. The priests did all those things, but the Levites are the ones who would.
Temple service was all done with the
Yep.
priests.
Yep.
Everything had-
Everything in the temple was done by the priests. But the Levites were the Levitical choir. They were the Levitical guards. They're the ones that if you came in unclean into the holy, into the sanctuary, where you could go, and you were unclean, they would kill you on the spot. That's how important it was. If you were a Gentile coming into the Jewish side, they would kill you on the spot, right?
Wasn't it the Levites also that God told to go and kill at Mount Sinai when they had
The golden calf.
the golden calf?
Yeah, that's why they were chosen as
Yeah.
for the priesthood and
Right.
the service, right? Because
Little army, God's little army.
Yep.
For the temple.
Yep.
Protection.
for protection, yep. Kept the people safe, keeping them separate. You don't want to go past this line. No, don't. They even had signs out. As a matter of fact, they just found one in some of the stones and stuff, a sign that says, warning Gentiles not to go beyond this spot. So,
What year?
huh? We don't know. I don't know what year it's from, but it was from when the temple was from the second temple. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's a courtyard sign?
Yep.
They were allowed in the courtyard.
It was a courtyard for the Gentiles, but they weren't allowed to go to the court of the Jews, and the court of the women was for women. Now, Gentile men and women were in the Gentile court, but they had the Jewish women on one side. That was for them. You had the court of the men, Jewish men on here, and then the court of the Gentiles. And they could bring sacrifice and offerings, and they would give them to the Levites for another thing. See, because they couldn't enter in to do it themselves, so they would hire a Levite to do it for them on their behalf.
And they had to pay the Levites?
Usually, I mean, you paying them for the sacrifice is what you're doing.
When the temple had their coins and Jesus turned over, were those Levites that were doing
No.
they were different?
No, they were outside the court. They were within the court where people were supposed to be able to buy their sacrifices. But what was happening is you had people that were cheating the people.
Right,
And that's what Yeshua, there was nothing wrong with what they were doing other than they were cheating the people.
but they were not Levites.
But they were not Levites. Well, there might have been some. I can't say they're not, but most of them were just merchants. That's all they were. Even people from the nations would come because knowing what they needed to bring and what they had to be, they would bring them too to make money. I mean, in the Chosen and the one about Yeshua and stuff, and they do show that. They do show some Gentiles in the court as well. Those are the ones that generally were cheating the people. And that's why he went and tipped over the tables and stuff, because not that they were in the temple, but because they were cheating the people. Because the temple, your Roman coins, Greek coins and stuff had to be changed from them to the shekel coins, the temple coins, because there was an image of a false god on those coins, and that cannot come into the sanctuary, right? So they had to exchange them for that, and that's where they were robbing the people.
And
Oh, you
also
give me.
People came away.
Yeah.
They weren't supposed to bring their sacrifices with them because they would go.
They would have to
down
buy them there
And so they would sell them there at home and then come in
With-
with their money.
with the money and, yep,
And buy new stuff there. at the
Exactly.
temple.
so there's a lot of stuff going in on here, but the thing is that Sukkot, Yeshua was born on the first night. Next Tuesday, we remember that that's the day he was circumcised and given the name Yeshua. Okay, so we do know, and you know the thing is, I know I listened to somebody who says that it was at Passover, but the tradition of the apostles was and has been the first night of Sukkot that he was born, and that's why I go with that, and it makes more sense when you read what's going on, you see what's going on, it makes more sense that way. And then, and I know I've heard other people say, well, he was born at Christmas, just it was a Jewish festival at Christmas. Well, there's no Jewish festival at Christmas. The only festival that we see that's in the fall, close to winter, is Sukkot. And when we see all these things line up, even historical rabbis and other teachers see that, I mean, there's even several books by non-believing rabbis talk about this, showing that that's Sukkot it's talking about. It's about Sukkot.
Jonathan Kahn, I think, said it was spring, the first of the year. Is that Nissan?
Nissan, yeah,
Or the first
Yeah.
day is when Jesus was born.
yeah.
is
But
what he said.
But according to this, and see if it was Passover, they would have been talking about all the different things that they would have had to do to be clean, you know, because there's all the graves would have been marked so people didn't actually walk on them or go into these places. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that they would have, and they wouldn't be living in a booth. They would be able to live in a house with the family and stuff, you know. So that's another reason why we know that it was at that time. Yeah. And that's why, you know, you've seen my theme of my music that we played today. Birth of Yeshua, the Sukkot, right? Because that's when it was. It was for a long time until the church took over and stuff and made it Christmas. It had been the first night, but of course when the Gentiles took over the church, and aspect of leadership and stuff, they changed it, right? But it is in, even in the Catholic Encyclopedia, it does talk about that originally it was at the same time as the Jewish festival of Sukkot. So that's what we do know. Yeah, yeah.
It's like he was very busy with that.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what we're doing. So the nations we are all going to get together. Yeshua is going to come, take his people, all of Israel from the four corners of the world, as it says, and those Gentiles that have taken hold, according to Zechariah 8:23. The Gentiles are going to take hold. They're going to take hold of a Jewish man's corner of his garment, which is the tzitzit, which is the Torah, and they're going to go say, "We want to go with you, for we've heard that God is with you." Okay. They're the ones who are going to go with the people of Israel and join Israel. And as it says, I think it's in Ezekiel too, where it says that they are no longer to be called foreigners, but to be called homeborn, born in the land, and given an inheritance in the tribe in which we just read that a couple weeks ago for a Haftorah portion. And we need to realize that God has always made room for non-Jews. Even when Israel left Egypt, it says a mixed company went with them. It wasn't just all descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was people from the nations. Even Egyptians went with them, and they became part of Israel. And so we get to look forward to that. And we get to look for this time of joy, of rejoicing, because, see, you've got Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, saying, hey, Day of Judgment is coming. Judgment is taking place during this time. You got 10 days to make things right. Judgment comes, okay, and things are finished at that point. But then comes Sukkot, God dwelling with his people, us dwelling with God. And that's what it's all about. You know, in the marriage, we have the chuppah, right? It's like a mini sukkah.
I was gonna say,
Okay.
one of the pictures they had in there looked like a chuppah.
Yeah,
and it was for
exactly.
Sukkot.
Yeah. because that's what it is. When two people are getting married, they're under the hoopah because it's a new household being created. And we are the household of God, and that's why we do this, not just to remember that our ancestors lived in the desert in tents, but that we became a new nation, a new people, a new family. Even though our families have divided up so where we're not necessarily related, but we are related. We're all relatives, you know. That's why in the Jewish communities they're so close, because, you know, like when weddings take place or funerals or anything like that, joyous occasions, the whole community gets together. Why? Because we're all family. Doesn't matter if you were born in some other country and you're not even related except maybe down by Moses or somebody like that. We're still family, you know. And that's the unique thing, and that's the greatest thing, is that we are part of the family of God, and this is our celebration of joy that we are having. And so as we go now, we got the celebration of Sukkot, and today we have the waving of the lulavim, the 4 species, which we'll do out in the sukkah after lunch and stuff. But we have our etrog, we have our hadassah, our myrtle, and our palm frond. Okay? And this is what we'll be waving. And when Yeshua was coming into Jerusalem that one time, it says they took palm fronds, young palm fronds, and threw them on the ground. Why? Because anytime the Messiah comes, it's going to be Sukkot. It's going to be Sukkot. That's what it's going to be. And that's what this is. And it's a commandment for us to wave as Sukkot. 7 days. We don't do it on Shabbat. We do it the other 7 days. Okay? And Hoshana Rabbah coming up is another awesome thing where we circle in the synagogue with our luavim 7 times and say the blessings. And then we go out to the sukkah and do our shaking and stuff. And it's really awesome. Yes?
That sounds like the wedding too.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Mhm.
a wedding,
It is.
how many times do you go around the hookah?
7 times. Yep.
That's what I was gonna
Yep.
say.
7, 7. Yep, that's right. Completion. And when the bride goes around the groom 7 times, I know I hear people say, well, that's kind of sexist, isn't it? No. It's her building a hedge of protection around him, that his eyes are only for her. His passions are only for her. His love as a husband is only for her and nobody else. That's what that's about.
Now, what I heard was the chuppah was the man's prayer shawl that they put up on poles.
You can, yes, we use a prayer shawl. Yep.
I
Yep.
heard.
Yep.
But it would be a large one like
A
this,
large.
not-
Well, even bigger than this. I've got one bigger. So for our hoopah, that's what we put on there. It's a really big one. But I also buy the groom a new one, being a start of the new family, new prayer shawl for them. And then as we do the final blessings, he will wrap his shawl around his bride, and we say the last blessings before we break the cup.
Now you know what's coming.
Yeah. So, but anyways, all right. So we're gonna dismiss here after the priestly blessing and go out to the sukkah and enjoy a meal and fellowship. And those who want to shake the lulav, we will do that out there too after we're done eating stuff. Not right away, but okay. So, all right. So everybody bow their heads and. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aharon and his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May it be your will. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May it be your will. May the Lord turn his face towards you and grant you peace. May it be your will. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. Go in peace. Have a awesome, joyful Sukkot. Tomorrow night at 7, we do have our Wednesday night Bible study, chapter 5. I did send out the questions a couple weeks ago. Next Tuesday morning is Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day, as well as Simchat Torah, rejoicing in the Torah. There'll be a service here at 10 a.m. again. And that's when we will roll the Torah scrolls back to Genesis and begin our Torah reading again. And also Tuesday night on the 14th, we'll then begin again our new Torah Club study, the end of days, the Jewish perspective on Revelation, which is awesome, by First Fruits of Zion. If you are wanting to get in on that, just go to torahclub.org. You can sign up for it. You can find in your area, hopefully, a Torah Club. There's lots of them around. If you aren't able to find a Torah Club, there isn't one in your area, just look up 56601, our zip code, and you'll find me, Rabbi John, on there, and it's in Bemidji, Minnesota. And you're more than welcome to join us because we do Zoom as well. So other than that, we are dismissed. Shalom. Chag Sameach. Sukkot. Everybody. I should have